Hello and welcome to GM the GM, a fun podcast about everything escape rooms from a behind-the-scenes Games Master perspective. In this episode, I thought it would be a good idea to go over exactly what a Games Master is. I said in episode 1 that I'm going to assume you've all played at least one escape room, so I'm not going to go over what they are, but I did think that perhaps you might not know what a Games Master is, and this is because sometimes they don't introduce themselves as a Games Master. So, in a nutshell, a Games Master is the person who oversees and runs your game. They will have also set up the room so that it looks how it should when you begin, and they will reset the room after you've finished playing. They will also have other duties such as cleaning, answering the phone, answering emails, general customer service, but all of those things will be individual to each company and they're not really relevant to what I'm talking about. So, escape rooms are a progression from TV shows such as The Crystal Maze and online escape room games such as Crimson Room. They also have a dash of Dungeons and Dragons about them, so the term Games Master has derived from all of those influences. Some people say Game Master, and some people say Games Master. I can't seem to find any difference between the two terms, so it seems to be a personal preference. I personally say Games Master, but that's only because that's the way the term was first given to me. Some people call themselves hosts, or games host, and some people don't use that title at all. So, upon arriving at your chosen escape room, you might hear any or none of these titles. But basically, the person who greets you and who runs your game is your Games Master. So whenever I refer to Games Master or GM, then that's who I'm talking about. So after your GM has greeted you and gone through all of the rules and health and safety, they'll lead you into the room. Sometimes this can be as easy as opening the door, and sometimes it involves things like handcuffs, blindfolds, elaborate backstories or characters. This bit can be a lot of fun. We see a great deal of looks on people's faces as we begin to get them into game mode. This can be excitement, apprehension, or sometimes even sheer terror, depending on the theme of the room, of course. Especially when people don't really quite know what they're in for. Perhaps it's their first escape room and they've been brought by somebody who's done them before, but they haven't. People get this look that the GMs will know what I'm talking about, but it's a little bit of excitement, but mainly apprehension and a little bit of fear because they just have no idea what to expect. So if you then start breaking out the handcuffs and blindfolds, that look can turn to terror sometimes. But it's all done in fun. And hopefully they would know that the theme of the room is going to be a bit scary or, like a prison-themed room. And, so hopefully the handcuffs and blindfolds are not too much of a surprise. But I can understand it. People that have not done one before suddenly start thinking, oh my gosh, how are we doing? Do I trust this person? I'm about to be locked in a room, and all sorts of things go through their minds. But it's really great to see that look before that people go into a room turn into just pure joy and enjoyment during and especially after they've finished as well. It's really great. I love that bit. So anyway, going back to Games Masters, on occasions your GM might enter the room with you. My very first GM role did involve going into the room with players. So I was to Games Master the game from inside the room with the team. But to be honest, that's the only time I've ever had that. Have not had that since. So I think it's the norm to have the GM help you into the room and then go and watch you from a control room. The GM will be able to see and hear you at all times. Sorry if you didn't already know that, but they can. And for the GMs that are listening, if you work somewhere without sound or without video, then I'm really sorry for you. It does make the job a lot trickier. Hopefully your owners can invest in some more tech for you soon. For those of you that may not know this fact, you may be thinking, oh no, they can see and hear us. How embarrassing. Well, yes, sometimes it can be. We hear you swearing and arguing with each other. We hear all of your quote unquote silly ideas, and we hear you getting it wrong, and we see you getting it wrong, and we see you try things that aren't correct. But let me reassure you a little bit that most GMs are fun, kind, and tolerant people. We have to be, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do the job. So for the most part, we're not judging, although we are human, so sometimes we are. The good news is that as players, you're so immersed into the game by just a few minutes in that you forget all about us. And if any of you are wondering why we have to watch you, well, the answer to that has many reasons. Safety is possibly the main one. We need to make sure that you're safe at all times. Escape rooms can be dark, they can be hazardous places, so if you were to bump into something or fall, then we need to be able to help immediately. But we are also watching for the well-being and safety of our room. Some players can get a bit rough, and escape rooms take thousands of pounds to create, so we want to be able to stop you as soon as you start to rip the wallpaper off, pull the props out of the wall, or start to use something in a destructive way. But all of this health and safety aside, we need to know where you are in your game and what you're doing, so that if you ask for help, we can give you the correct help for where you are in the game. So I'll go into this a bit more in a future podcast, but as a player, as well as a GM, I can tell you that it's really annoying when you get a clue for something that you've already done, or if you have to explain to the GM where you are in the game. So being tolerant and being patient is the main qualities that a GM needs to have, because we never know who's going to walk through the door. And we never know what you're going to be like in the room. You might be puzzle whizzes and run through the puzzles really quickly and solve them all without any help. You might be puzzle newbies and not have a clue what you're doing, really need lots of help and, get all the wrong answers and just need help every step of the way. Or like most people, you're probably somewhere in between. But basically, if we were really judgmental, if we were hotheads, people that stress easily, people that don't have any patience, we wouldn't really be able to do this job, because we have to let you play your game your way. And that means not jumping in too often to help, and not being judgmental if you can't solve a puzzle, because although we've seen the game hundreds, maybe even more, you are seeing it for the first time. And I think that's the most important thing for a GM to remember, is the players are there for the first time and they have no idea how many puzzles there are, how much of the game there is left, so they just don't know any of these things. So we have to remain impartial and non-judgmental and patient. So after you've finished your game, your GM will greet you and talk about the game, usually. They might even give you a little trinket or gift, and they will almost certainly take your photo. A team photo is traditional, but not mandatory. So if you hate having your photo taken, you don't have to do that. I do have some people refuse it sometimes, but like I say, it is traditional, so you will always be offered a photo. Pretty much anyway. I've never not been offered a photo yet. After you've gone, they will go about resetting the room. And this basically means tidying up everything that the players have just undone and strewn around the room. Sometimes people are really, really messy and they leave things all over the place, and sometimes people are a bit more tidy. And I'm going to go into this in a future episode as well. But basically it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 25 minutes. There may even be longer resets than that. Once the room is all back to its original state, they're ready for the next team. And the process basically starts over again and repeats for the whole day. Potentially up to 6 teams in a day. That's what my company has. But some escape rooms may offer less, some escape rooms may offer more. So you could potentially do that cycle quite a few times in a day. So there we have the life of a Games Master. I just want to take a moment here to explain my logo for this podcast. If you hadn't noticed it already, it's a cartoon depiction of myself as a sort of superhero character holding a key. The reason I wanted a cape to be included is because of a story involving me and my optician. So a while ago, I had an eye checkup with my optician. Well, it was actually a new optician. And so they go through the usual questions, and opticians always ask what you do for a living so that they can know whether you're suffering from eye strain and things like that. So when they asked me what I do for a living, I said, I'm a Games Master. And the GMs out there will understand the preparedness we have to explain just what the hell this means when we get that blank look after we say, I'm a Games Master. And sure thing, it happened to me. That blank look appeared. But instead of them saying, well, what's that? He just considered it for a moment and then said, do you wear a cape? I just laughed. And I just went, no, but we should. That's such a good idea. I suggested the idea to my boss after that, but they weren't keen, unfortunately. But my optician surprised me on that day by asking that unusual question. I got a cool response, which I've not had before or since, and it made me laugh. So when I was designing the logo for this podcast, I knew that the character needed to have a cape. If there are any GMs out there that wear a cape, let me know, because that's cool. I would love that. So I hope that you all now have a good idea as to what a Games Master does and is. And if you have any questions or comments, then please find me on Facebook by searching GM the GM, or you can email me at gmthegm@aol.com. The next episode is going to be lots of hints and tips on how to prepare for your escape room experience. So make sure to subscribe and tune in. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.